Have you ever looked at an elderly loved one and felt something was different, but couldn't quite put your finger on what? Maybe you notice grandma isn't finishing her meals anymore, or dad seems unusually tired all the time. These small changes are easy to dismiss. We tell ourselves it's just part of getting older. But what if I told you these subtle shifts could actually be warning signs that time is running short? I recently spoke with a woman named Sarah who noticed her 82-year-old father losing weight. It wasn't dramatic at first, she told me. He'd always been thin, so I didn't worry too much. 6 months later, her father was in hospice care, and looking back, Sarah realized that weight loss was the first sign of his decline. If only I'd known what it meant, she said. We could have had important conversations while he was still fully present. The truth is, our bodies often send quiet signals months, sometimes even a year, before life reaches its final stage. But because these changes appear gradually, most families miss them completely, recognizing the pattern only in hindsight when it's too late to properly prepare, too late to have meaningful conversations, too late to make those final memories count. In this video, we're going to talk about 5 shocking health signs that often appear when an elderly person may be in their final year. Some might be changes you've already noticed but brushed off as normal aging. Others might be subtle shifts you haven't connected to declining health. Understanding these signals now won't just help you provide better care. It will give you the precious gift of time to prepare emotionally, make important decisions together, and ensure your loved one's final chapter is filled with dignity, comfort, and peace. Stay with us until the end, because recognizing these 5 critical signs could be the difference between being caught completely off guard by a loved one's passing and having the chance to say everything that needs to be said, to make peace with what's happening, and to make their final months truly meaningful. This isn't about living in fear. It's about being prepared for one of life's most significant transitions. One of the earliest and most telling signs that an elderly person may be approaching their final year of life is unexplained weight loss. I'm not talking about someone deliberately trying to shed a few pounds. This is different. It's weight that disappears almost quietly, often without anyone noticing, until clothes start hanging loosely or a belt needs to be tightened an extra notch. Why do so many of us miss this critical warning sign? Because it happens gradually. An elderly person might lose just a pound or 2 each month, not enough to raise immediate concern, especially if they've always been on the slender side. We're also quick to rationalize it. Mom's appetite has always been small, or dad's just being more health conscious these days. What makes this particularly deceptive is that the person themselves might not notice or mention it. They aren't actively trying to lose weight. Their body is simply beginning a natural process of slowing down. What's actually happening physiologically is profound. As the body begins its final transition, several systems start to change. The digestive system becomes less efficient at absorbing nutrients. Metabolism shifts. The body may produce more cytokines, inflammatory compounds that can suppress appetite. Even taste and smell receptors may not work as well, making food less appealing. This isn't just ordinary aging. It's the body beginning to conserve energy as vital systems prepare to wind down. The impact goes far beyond appearance. When significant weight loss occurs, muscle mass decreases, a condition called sarcopenia. This doesn't just make someone look frailer. It fundamentally changes their strength, balance, and energy levels. Tasks that were manageable before, walking to the mailbox, getting up from a chair, carrying groceries, suddenly become exhausting challenges. This creates a cascade effect. Less activity leads to further muscle loss, which increases fatigue, which further reduces appetite. Imagine watching someone you love gradually disappear before your eyes. Not just physically smaller, but their presence in the world somehow diminishing. They may withdraw from activities they once enjoyed because they simply lack the strength. Family meals, once a source of connection, might become stressful as they pick at their food while everyone watches with concern. If you notice unexplained weight loss in an elderly loved one, here's what you should consider doing. First, don't immediately jump to worst-case scenarios, but do take it seriously enough for a medical evaluation. A doctor can help determine if there's an underlying condition that can be treated. Second, don't force large meals. This often backfires. Instead, focus on nutrient-dense foods they actually enjoy. Small, frequent meals often work better than 3 large ones. Third, make mealtime social and pleasant, rather than a clinical task of getting enough calories. Most importantly, use this sign as a gentle wake-up call. If other signs on our list also appear, it may be time to have those conversations you've been putting off. Ask about their wishes, discuss what would make them most comfortable, create space for them to share what's important to them now. Remember, noticing weight loss isn't about trying to reverse the inevitable. Sometimes it's about recognizing that a new chapter is beginning, one that requires different kinds of care and attention. By being alert to this sign, you gain precious time to adjust your approach and focus on what truly matters in the time that remains. The second critical sign that an elderly person might be in their final year is unusual fatigue and a significant decrease in energy. Not just occasional tiredness, but a profound, persistent exhaustion that sleep doesn't seem to fix. This isn't the normal, "I need an afternoon nap" kind of fatigue. It's a fundamental shift where someone who once had enough energy for daily activities now seems to be running on empty most of the time. Many family members confuse this with normal aging or attribute it to poor sleep, which is why this warning sign often goes unrecognized. "Dad's just slowing down," they might say, or "Mom's never been a morning person." What makes this particularly easy to misinterpret is that elderly people themselves often try to push through it or are reluctant to complain about being tired. They may fear losing independence or becoming a burden, so they minimize how exhausted they really feel. The physiological basis for this extreme fatigue is complex. As the body begins its final transition, the heart may not pump as efficiently, resulting in less oxygen circulating to muscles and organs. Hormonal changes affect energy regulation. Cellular metabolism, the process that converts nutrients into energy, becomes less efficient. The body in its wisdom is conserving resources for essential functions, redirecting energy away from activities that aren't critical for survival. This fatigue impacts every aspect of life. Someone who once enjoyed morning walks might now spend most of the day in a chair. Conversations may become shorter as talking requires too much effort. Hobbies and social activities, painting, gardening, playing cards with friends, gradually fall away. Even basic self-care like showering or changing clothes might become overwhelming tasks that require hours of rest afterward. Think about what this experience must feel like from your loved one's perspective. Imagine wanting to participate in family activities, but feeling as though you're moving through quicksand. Picture watching others continue their lives at full speed while you're forced to observe from the sidelines. Your body simply refusing to provide the energy you need. This isn't laziness or a lack of willpower. It's the body beginning a natural process that no amount of positive thinking can override. When you notice this kind of profound fatigue, resist the urge to encourage them to push through it or stay active at all costs. Instead, help them adapt their environment and schedule to conserve energy for what matters most to them. Perhaps it's more important for them to have energy for a grandchild's weekly visit than to get dressed in street clothes every day. Maybe they'd rather save strength for a special family dinner than exhaust themselves with a routine doctor's appointment. This is also the time to start having conversations about what brings them joy and meaning. When energy is limited, how do they want to spend it? Would they rather use their good hours reading books they love or visiting with certain people? These aren't easy conversations, but they're essential for honoring their autonomy and dignity as energy continues to wane. Remember that this fatigue, while concerning, also offers an opportunity to slow down together, to sit quietly and perhaps have deeper conversations than busy activities allow. Sometimes it's in these quiet moments, just sitting together, no agenda, no tasks, that the most meaningful connections happen. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos that could help you navigate these challenging transitions. Now let's move forward to our third critical sign. The third sign that an elderly person may be entering their final year is subtle cognitive changes accompanied by emotional or social withdrawal. This isn't necessarily dementia or Alzheimer's, though those conditions can certainly be present. Rather, I'm talking about more nuanced shifts, increased confusion, difficulty finding words, personality changes, or a growing disinterest in social interaction and activities they once enjoyed. This sign is particularly important because families often attribute these changes to depression, stress, or hearing difficulties, all reasonable explanations that can delay recognition of a more significant transition. Sometimes families think their loved one is just being stubborn or difficult when they begin refusing invitations or seem less engaged in conversations. Mom's just having a bad day, they might say, or dad's always been a bit of a loner anyway. What's actually happening in the brain and body is fascinating, if sobering. As circulation gradually decreases, less oxygen reaches the brain, affecting cognitive function. Neurotransmitters, the chemicals that allow brain cells to communicate, may become imbalanced. The brain, like other organs, begins to prioritize essential functions over social engagement or complex thinking. Some researchers believe this withdrawal might even be the body's way of beginning to separate from earthly connections as it prepares for its final transition. The impact of these changes ripples through daily life. Someone who was once the life of family gatherings might now sit quietly in the corner, observing rather than participating. A person who loved reading might lose track of the plot or read the same page repeatedly. Names of familiar objects might suddenly become elusive. Decision-making, even about simple things like what to eat for breakfast, can become overwhelming. And increasingly, there's a preference for solitude or for the company of just one or two trusted individuals. Imagine experiencing this from the inside. Your mind, which has been your reliable companion for decades, gradually becoming less predictable. Conversations that once flowed easily now require exhausting concentration. Social situations that were once enjoyable becoming confusing or overwhelming. Is it any wonder that withdrawal often follows? It's not rejection. It's a natural response to a changing internal landscape. When you notice these cognitive shifts and the pulling away that often accompanies them, resist the urge to force engagement or constantly correct mistakes. Instead, create a calm, predictable environment with minimal distractions. Simplify communications. Ask one question at a time. Wait patiently for responses, and don't overwhelm with complex information. Accept their preference for quieter, smaller gatherings or one-on-one interactions. This is also the time to handle practical matters if you haven't already. Are legal documents in order? Have they expressed wishes about medical care? These conversations are never easy, but they're much harder if cognitive function continues to decline. Look for moments of clarity, perhaps in the morning when many elderly people are at their sharpest, to address important matters. Most importantly, recognize that even as cognitive ability changes, emotional awareness often remains intact. Your loved one can still sense respect versus condescension, patience versus frustration, love versus obligation. They may not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Sometimes just sitting quietly together, holding a hand, or looking through old photos can create moments of connection that transcend the need for words. This withdrawal, while painful to witness, also offers a gift: the opportunity to simplify, to focus on essential connections, and to communicate through presence rather than just conversation. Sometimes the most profound communication happens in silence, through a gentle touch or simply being fully present with each other. The fourth sign that an elderly person may be in their final year is a noticeably weakened immune system, characterized by frequent infections and wounds that heal slowly or not at all. This isn't just catching a cold more often, it's a pattern of recurring or persistent infections that seem to come one after another, with less and less time for recovery in between. Many families miss this warning sign because they treat each infection as an isolated incident rather than part of a larger pattern. Grandma's always had urinary tract infections, they might say, or Dad's skin has always bruised easily. Individual doctors' visits for separate issues may not connect the dots, especially if the elderly person sees different specialists for different problems. The gradual nature of immune decline makes it even harder to notice until the pattern becomes obvious in retrospect. The physiological basis for this sign is a comprehensive weakening of the body's defense systems. As circulation decreases, Fewer immune cells reach the sites of infection or injury. The bone marrow produces fewer white blood cells, the frontline defenders against pathogens. The skin, our first barrier against infection, becomes thinner and more permeable. Even the gut, which houses a significant portion of our immune system, becomes less effective at preventing harmful bacteria from entering the bloodstream. The impact on quality of life can be severe. Common infections that a younger person would shake off in days might linger for weeks or months. A small cut or bruise that would heal quickly in middle age might become a persistent wound. Urinary tract infections, pneumonia, skin infections, and oral thrush become not just more common, but more dangerous. Each infection takes a greater toll, leaving the person weaker and more vulnerable to the next one. Consider what this cycle feels like from the elderly person's perspective. Imagine finally starting to feel better from one illness, only to immediately come down with another. Picture the frustration of wounds that won't close despite careful attention. Think about the demoralizing effect of repeated hospitalizations, courses of antibiotics with their side effects, and the growing sense that your body can no longer be relied upon to protect you or repair itself. If you notice this pattern of frequent infections or poor healing, first ensure that each acute issue receives proper medical attention. Then, step back and look at the bigger picture with their healthcare providers. Could these repeated infections be part of a larger pattern? Are there preventative measures that could help? Better nutrition, hydration, or careful skincare? Can medications be reviewed to ensure they aren't contributing to immune suppression? This is also the time to have thoughtful conversations about goals of care. When infections become frequent and recovery becomes harder, what interventions make sense? Some elderly people might want every possible treatment, while others might prefer to focus on comfort rather than cure, especially if hospitalizations become increasingly difficult to recover from. These aren't one-time conversations, but ongoing discussions that evolve as circumstances change. Remember that while medical interventions remain important, simple comfort measures take on greater significance. Gentle repositioning to prevent pressure sores, meticulous oral care, proper hydration, and careful attention to symptoms that might indicate a developing infection can all help break the cycle and improve quality of life, even if they can't reverse the underlying immune decline. This pattern of infections, while concerning, also offers an opportunity to refocus care on comfort and quality rather than just longevity. Sometimes the kindest approach isn't fighting every infection aggressively, but ensuring that each day includes moments of comfort, dignity, and human connection, regardless of what the future holds. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos that could help you provide better care for your aging loved ones. Now let's move to our 5th and most revealing sign. The 5th and perhaps most significant sign that an elderly person may be in their final year is subtle but progressive changes in breathing patterns and circulation. This isn't about the dramatic breathing difficulties that might send someone to the emergency room. Rather, I'm referring to more nuanced changes that can begin months before the final decline. Slightly irregular breathing, longer pauses between breaths, a gentle shortness of breath with minimal exertion, or a gradual bluish tinge to the fingertips or lips. This sign is frequently overlooked because these changes often happen so gradually that they become the new normal. Family members adapt without realizing it, helping more with stairs, bringing things closer so their loved one doesn't have to walk as far, or raising their voice slightly to be heard over increasingly labored breathing. The elderly person themselves may compensate by limiting activity or taking more rest periods, often without explicitly mentioning their growing breathlessness. What's happening physiologically represents one of the body's most fundamental changes. The heart, which has beaten steadily for decades, begins to lose efficiency. It may develop irregular rhythms or simply pump with less force. The lungs become less elastic, while tiny air sacs, alveoli, that exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide gradually close off. Blood vessels stiffen, making circulation to extremities more difficult. These aren't necessarily conditions that show up clearly on standard medical tests. They're part of the body's natural winding down process. The impact on daily life can be profound but subtle. Someone who used to walk unassisted might now need to stop and rest every few steps. Conversations may become punctuated by pauses to catch breath. Sleep patterns change as the person may need to be propped up on multiple pillows to breathe comfortably. Cold hands and feet become persistently present, even in warm rooms. A bluish tint might appear around the lips or nail beds, so subtle at first that it's only noticeable in certain lighting. Imagine experiencing these changes from within. Your body, which has carried you through decades of life, now struggles with its most basic functions. Every breath requires conscious effort. Your fingers and toes feel perpetually cold. Activities must be carefully measured against your limited energy and breath. Even speaking, our most fundamental way of connecting, becomes a calculation of necessity rather than spontaneity. When you notice these circulatory and breathing changes, it's important to focus on comfort rather than just trying to fix the underlying issue. Simple measures can make a significant difference. Elevating the head during sleep, ensuring rooms aren't too warm, which can increase the sensation of breathlessness, using lightweight blankets that don't restrict movement, and providing frequent rest periods during any activity. This is also the time for the most important conversations about end-of-life wishes if they haven't happened already. These breathing and circulatory changes often indicate that the body is in its final transition. Having clear directives about hospitalization, resuscitation, and interventions can prevent unwanted medical procedures and ensure that your loved one's final wishes are honored. What makes this sign particularly significant is its connection to the body's most vital functions. Breathing and circulation are our most fundamental life processes. When these begin to change, it signals that the body is preparing for its final transition. But there is profound wisdom in this process too. The body knows how to be born, and it knows how to complete its cycle. There can be peace in recognizing and accepting this natural process rather than fighting against it. These changes, while difficult to witness, also invite us to be fully present. When each breath becomes precious, we're reminded of what matters most, not busy activities or future plans, but the simple gift of being together in this moment. Sometimes it's in these quiet times, just listening to each other breathe, that we find the deepest connection and the most profound peace. As we come to the end of our discussion, let's take a moment to review the 5 critical signs we've covered. Unexplained weight loss that happens gradually but persistently, unusual fatigue that rest doesn't seem to resolve, cognitive changes and social withdrawal that go beyond normal aging, increased infections and poor wound healing that create a cycle of illness and partial recovery, and finally, subtle but progressive changes in breathing and circulation that affect even the most basic activities. Any one of these signs alone might not be cause for immediate concern, but when you begin to notice several of them appearing together, it's often a signal that your loved one's body is entering its final transition. This isn't something that happens overnight. These changes typically unfold over months, sometimes even a full year before death. The gradual nature of this process gives us a precious window of opportunity if we're paying attention. I understand that recognizing these signs can bring up difficult emotions, grief, fear, denial, even anger. It's natural to want to fix things, to find the right doctor, the right treatment, the right approach that will reverse what's happening. And certainly medical evaluation remains important to rule out treatable conditions. But there comes a point when the wisest, most loving response isn't to fight against nature, but to focus on creating meaning, comfort, and connection in the time that remains. This knowledge isn't meant to be frightening. It's meant to be empowering. When you recognize these signs early, you gain the opportunity to have important conversations while your loved one can still participate fully. You can discuss their wishes, not just about medical care, but about how they want to spend their remaining time. You can prioritize what matters most to them, whether that's resolving old conflicts, seeing certain people, or simply being in comfortable, familiar surroundings. For families who miss these signs, the end often comes as a shock. We had no idea, they say, wishing for more time, for conversations they never had, for moments they would have treasured had they known how precious and limited time was. Recognizing these signs doesn't change the ultimate outcome, but it dramatically changes how the final chapter unfolds. for the elderly person and for those who love them. If you're seeing these signs in someone you care about, remember that you don't have to navigate this journey alone. Hospice services offer support long before the final days, sometimes months in advance, providing not just medical care, but emotional and practical support for the entire family. Support groups, both in person and online, connect you with others walking the same path. And honest conversations with healthcare providers can help clarify what to expect and how to respond as changes progress. The final year of life, when approached with awareness and intention, doesn't have to be just about decline. It can also be a time of profound connection, meaningful conversations, simple pleasures, and even moments of unexpected joy. By recognizing these signs early, you create space for a different kind of care, one that focuses not just on the body's needs, but on the whole person and what matters most to them in their final chapter. I'd love to hear your experiences. Has this information helped you understand changes you've been noticing in a loved one? What questions do you still have about navigating this difficult transition? Please share in the comments below. Your insights might help someone else on this journey. And if you found this video helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others who might benefit from this knowledge. Together, we can bring more awareness, compassion, and preparation to one of life's most significant transitions. Thank you for staying with me through this important discussion. In our next video, we'll talk about practical ways to create meaningful moments and lasting memories during this final stage of life. Until then, approach each day with someone you love with awareness, presence, and the knowledge that even in decline, there is dignity, meaning, and the profound grace of human connection. I'll now generate detailed visual ideas and high-quality text-to-image prompts for the script, ensuring they are fact-based, engaging, and relatable for the 60-plus audience. The visuals will be designed to align with the narrative and enhance the storytelling experience.